CHS Alumni Talk. I am your host, Heather Lindstad, the Capital Campaign Director for the Alumni Association, a proud 1985 grad and a Hall of Famer. And today is a special day for me to be joined by a bunch of Hall of Famers, and the reason that so many proud alumni can say that they went to Chelmsford High and the whole system of being part of the houses and being guided by these wonderful deans. So take time to introduce yourselves, even though there should be no introduction. But to my left, the far to start it, would be my dean, Mr. Ed Queen. You want to introduce yourself today, or you want to go around? And you can introduce all these guys.
All right. Ed Quinn, Dean of Emerson House, 17 years. And to my right is Angie Toronto, one of the older fellows here. He was the dean of Hawthorne House, not the original. Right. Dean Kelly was the original dean, but he was the third dean. Dean Fleming came after Dean Kelly. To his right is Jack Conrad, dean of Whittier House, the esteemed Whittier House, as he would have us believe. And on this side over here, we have Mr. Bernie Battle, who was social studies teacher in Emerson House. He was brought up correctly. He was then made dean of Whittier House, which he served elegantly for many years. And then Emerson House was closed, and I had to leave. And while I was gone, they put in Mr. Doherty as dean of Emerson House, and he served several years as dean at Emerson House. And then we have Mr. Al Thomas, who was dean of Hawthorne House also, and went on to become principal. So that is our lineup for today. Well,
the inner workings, we as students would never know what was going on behind closed doors, but it seemed like we all had bragging rights of being from Emerson. I will always say that. Were there bragging rights amongst you, amongst the houses?
Not too much, Jack, huh?
No. The house plan was to get communication between students and between teachers. And one of the things that I think worked the best was the communication between the deans at that time. We enjoyed one another, and we talked to one another, so that if somebody did something and there were several students from houses, we would talk about what punishment was going to be, or what if they did something good, what we would do because they did something good. And that was one of the things that I think led to being a really good high school with a large number of students.
I never liked the idea that I had to genuflect when I went into
Whittier House.
Whittier House.
Yeah, well, definitely, Whittier House was the best of all of them anyway.
And why do you state that?
Because their dean was great.
and they continued that tradition, if I may add to that.
Yes.
With the great dean. But actually, getting back to the original question, when we first set up the new house plan, all right, the faculty was, I think to say the least, a little skittish about it. But we get to choose our own dean, which really gave, I think, the houses a definite identification, okay? For some reason, all the oddballs and the wise guys ended up with Mr. Quinn, okay? So we in Emerson House always thought we were the fun group, all right? And we did. We had a lot of fun playing tricks on each other, and you'd go back there and you would laugh. In between classes, you'd laugh for 5 or 10 minutes straight, okay? I mean, every house had their own identity, all right? And of course, when we became an administrative team, the houses then broke up into departmental structures. I mean, Emerson became social studies, Whitty became math, Hawthorne became, what were you all down at? English, yeah?
I think the students themselves identified with the house, and that's what we wanted them to do.
Right.
Is to, realize that they were not only part of Chelmsford High School, because when they first came, they were afraid they weren't going to ever see their friends again, because it was a large high school. We were, what, 1900, Ed?
Yeah.
More than that. You had more than that.
Class of 82.
We went up, when we took the ninth grade,
we did.
We were 2,700
right,
students.
That ninth grade was the class of 85.
Right.
Yeah.
We were the best thing that happened, right? Yeah. Okay. What would you say? Okay, good thing.
The nice thing of the house system was the students had a place to be a family.
They got to know the guidance counselors, the secretaries, the aides, the dean. So it wasn't like you just dealt with your students. You knew everyone in the school, but a student had a safe place to go in a huge school. They felt at home. And then the beauty is, like, when they graduate by house. And my favorite thing is the last person to see them as a high school student is their dean. We stand
I
at
like
the
that
bottom of the
way.
ramp.
Right.
And when they go up that ramp after they leave us,
Right.
they're not high school students and they're going off. And that's the ultimate payoff when you've worked with students for 4 years.
And I think each student, you knew their name. They knew
That's right.
the administrator knew the name of that kid and knew that kid.
You did.
You know?
Yep.
Am I right?
Right.
Yeah.
And while you were working there and you were doing all of these different things to make the kids comfortable, the teachers comfortable for that immediate attention that they needed, you wonder, did it make an impact? Going to these class reunions, I feel so great because that's all they talk about. I remember going down there and you did this, you did that, and then Dean Conrad would come in and you'd say, get out of here, whatever the case would be.
Right.
And everybody just crossed and helped one another. And it was so nice to hear that. And I think to think when you went back, when did it start? When you were in the house plans, it was a
73,
72. Yeah,
to go way
72,
back then
72.
to hear them say that,
They started
it's a
planning in
working
72.
it's a working thing. And they do still, Heather, like you do, take that pride that I'm a Hawthorne House student, Whittier House or Emerson House, whatever it is, to hear them say that. So, it did work. I know I enjoyed it. Of course, when I came up to the high school from McCarthy, there was a housemaster down there. We had the house plan, the red and the white. And so when I came up there, I had an idea of what a house plan was. So it was just an easy adjustment for me. And of course, I brought my class up with me in '82, which was easier for that transition for all of us, even them, because now they knew who I was. So if they didn't know who he was, or Ed, who else was up there? Dawn, excuse me. They knew they could come to me and just say, what am I going to do, So they had a safe haven, which was great.
Right.
I think one of the improvements that our team did with the house plan to improve it was to legacy kids, all right? Because oftentimes you'd get a kid, 1 year, and Eddie get the sister the next year, or maybe Angie get the brother the year after that. What we tended to do is we wanted the kids to stay together as a family,
Right.
okay, the family unit. So the parents and the kids got to know the guidance counselors, they got to know the dean. We kind of built on what you guys had established in terms of establishing a house, and we made it more of a real home type house, all right? Not that you guys didn't,
No.
but the legacy did help that,
It did.
And everybody talks about Chelmsford, and there's such great pride, and I'm having a very fun time going back to class reunions, and there is so much pride. And you all had students, your own kids, that went through it. And
Yeah.
What would you say makes Chelmsford a little bit more unique? I mean, we do have our own alumni association. I know other schools are starting to do it, but even from the sense of what you got from your own kids going through the high school, I mean, what would you say it is?
It's really a family, and it sounds very cliche, but you felt that when anyone struggled, if there was an issue in a family, everyone really cared, and people would say hi. You go down the hall, teachers, administrators would go out of their way to make contact with kids, and the kids felt at home. My kids, of course, grew up in the school system, and when I was a dean, they went to all kinds of events and things, but they were made to feel comfortable by the teachers, and I think it's sometimes overstated, and I know it sounds real cliche and corny, but you feel that when you go to reunions. That's why when we'd have freshman parent night, we'd always ask, how many of you went to Chelmsford High? And the hands would go up, and we'd say, how many of you swore you'd never come back here once you graduated? And that's one of the reasons why they come back, is for the schools.
But having the kids, we always worried what effect that would have, being an administrator
Yeah.
and having kids in
Yes.
the school. And I had 6 that went through, and there was never really any issue. And we knew boundaries. I never ever questioned them about what they knew or what was going on in the students. And they in turn never looked for any favors or any favoritism from me. And in fact, many of my kids worked in our office, helping our secretaries doing the work in the office. And I did find out there was one time one of my daughters said that they did pull a detention slip for one of their friends. So I was absolutely shocked.
You were shocked.
I
Now, how
That
many
it
years did
wasn't
it
the
take her to admit to
About
this
20,
story?
25.
Yeah.
I wanted a full-scale investigation, who the perp was, who was the kid that got off without serving his detention, and so we're still working on that.
I think
Now,
one of
getting back to the issue about what makes Chelmsford High special, all right? For years, we had a magazine drive at school. It was a fundraiser for the senior class. And the guy that came in to do the fundraiser every year was named Jim Davis. And I think Jim hit it right on the head for me when he said, this is a school with a smile on its face, all right? And I think if we look back over the years, all the years that we can talk about here, and we're going back quite a few years at Chelmsford High School, that school has always had a student body that is somewhat special. I don't want the kids to get a big head, but you can tell Chelmsford kids, all right? And they're still the same today. You go into that building, kids will hold doors for you. Kids will say hello to you.
Exactly.
They'll call you sir. They'll smile a lot. They're talking to each other. It's that type of a school. And that comes from the top to start with. But the faculty, as Jeff mentioned, is a huge aspect of that school. We've always had a premier
I
faculty.
agree with you. The faculty was, bought into the system.
Yes.
That's what made it really work.
Mm-hmm.
And it had to be that way. The faculty had to buy in,
Yeah.
and they did. They put a lot of time in. There were so many things and functions that the teacher did. And they had family members too that were going to Chelmsford High School too. So, it was just a pleasure to deal with the teachers and the students especially.
Well, don't you think you had a major impact? I mean, there's so many teachers now that are
Oh, yeah.
CHS
Yeah.
alumni. We have
Yes.
we have a bunch of principals around at different schools here at Parker, at the high school that are CHS alum. I mean, do you think that whole thing of giving back is kind of the key?
And we include, I'll say, we have included all kinds of kids. Even now, our athletic teams, there are students who have disabilities or whatever associated with almost every team. And in terms of best buddies, they're very active in terms of involving kids in the social life of the school. And if kids have an idea, while we have fixed activities from year to year, almost every year some of them change because the interests of the kids change. Now, for example, when the students of the month come up to talk to us at Rotary, they talk about magic. And I'm like, what the heck is magic? They have a club for magic and they have a club for poetry, which didn't exist. Yeah. The biggest thing that happened when I was able to start a club was dance. A couple of girls came to me and said, we're going to have a dance club. I said, okay, this won't last long. And it's,
That's right.
But it's become, they perform in all the shows. They have their own recital.
Right.
It's a big deal. And
One
so
of those girls now, by the way, sorry to interrupt, runs her own dance studio, okay, and comes to the Performing Arts Center every year to run her show. All right, so that started at Chelmsford High School.
So there are a lot, there are things. There's something for everyone, and if they don't take advantage of it, you can't help it. But really, there is something for everyone if they look for it.
Yeah.
And then when you listen to when you have your students of the month, to listen to their involvement, it is amazing. I just say, how do you do it? But the thing is that while all along, as these kids want to get involved, they're encouraged, and I think it starts from the teachers, it starts from the house dean, their secretaries in the house, because they all get involved. Maureen Perry, God rest her soul, with her Secret Santa. The kids, you had to say to kids, we don't have enough. We need, and they would keep going. And today I hear it's still going. I heard somebody last night or somebody at the selectmen's meeting say that they were part of that Secret Santa. But it's just amazing to see that a lot of these things are continuing. And it's, I just say, that's the pride, that Chelmsford High has.
Well, I think there's tradition. I think there's tradition because when you think about it, we all taught at the high school. Well, you were at the middle school.
I taught at the middle school.
But we had all taught in the system before we became administrators.
Right.
So when you became administrator, you brought that history with you. And we have teachers, Carl Rondina and Andy Pasquale, Michelin Queen, taught there 40 years.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and so people, they stayed, and because they stayed, there was that stability.
Mr. Rondino was a teacher? I thought he was just a coach. No?
Well, no, I did carry him. As
Okay.
He taught that music stuff. I
He
think.
talked about music stuff. So you have a lot of fond memories. Like, what would be one of your top memories, though, of being a dean at Chelmsford High School?
Oh my God.
I mean, you just kind of mentioned even putting in the dance thing. I mean, what would be one of those memories that, you know?
There was,
Certainly having your own kids graduate
Yeah.
and being there to see them graduate.
Yeah.
And in my case, a couple times calling their names even at graduation, since that was one of my duties at graduation. But it was just so many. I can't recall any particular time. I enjoyed going to work every day.
Yeah.
And like the old cliche says, I didn't really work a day in my life. You know, Jacks that I know used to see. But it is. It's just one of those things where you just felt very fulfilled, that you feel that not only did you do your job, but the people there recognized that you did your job and that you did it together.
I think one of the things that I think most of is, I went on 9 trips with them, 6 overseas. And Bernie must have done more than I did, because he was in England. I think he lived in England. And,
Yeah, we voted for that.
Yeah, we voted.
but it was those kids, when they went overseas, were so representative of the school.
Yeah.
They did so much to make Chelmsford be known there for Chelmsford High School.
Yeah.
That's true.
I think one of the days that was sad in some ways, but reaffirmed faith in the school is when Melody McCopolis passed away in Emerson House.
Right.
It's a tragedy, and Pam DeGrazio was an EMT, and she was right there and did what she could, but it was too late. We moved kids to the cafeteria, waiting for the emergency people and so forth. Everyone did exactly as they were told, and they were down the caf for a while.
Yeah.
And the cooperation was tremendous. And every time there has been another crisis situation or serious situation, they always arise to the occasion. Sometimes trivial things, they won't help you at all. But if it's important, they're right there. And I think that's, you know, we always said if the students aren't on your side, you're in big trouble.
But I think that comes from, again, the staff, because the staff was so committed.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to when I went up there, being a middle school teacher and administrator, going up there. I think one of the easiest, I knew a lot of the teachers, but there was a lot at the high school I didn't know. But because I was a teacher, I think I was accepted, easily than if I was a stranger coming from outside. Because what do you know about Chelmsford? You
Right.
know? But
Yep.
you carried on all of this here. And I think with the staff and everybody working together, the kids get that nice image that they know this is what I'm going to do.
Well,
too.
Angie, I can tell you, I came up 2 years before you, and I spent months telling everyone you were a good guy.
Oh, thank you.
So happy.
Thank you. I'm glad I found out who that person was. Thank you.
I've known him for over 50 years, and I mean,
You're the one that-
And you had nothing nice to say? What happened there?
I was just-
Yeah.
So we all agreed that Angie was half decent.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Thank you.
One of the things at the reunions, you guys have experienced it too, I think, is they all want to know if we thought their prank was the best.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And we could never officiate during the
God,
prank
yeah.
itself. We had to have
course,
serious
yeah.
face and
Yeah.
what's going on here. But there were some that were very clever.
They were.
And there were some that were dangerous. The automobile in
Let's
the
talk
water,
about the
car in
chickens.
pond.
I want to
Yeah,
talk about
the chicken's a great one.
All right, so let's
That's
talk about the
That's a
chickens.
great one, yeah.
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Well, I still have an image.
We had kids that released chickens in the school. All right.
cruel.
It was cruel. It was very, very cruel. There's no
Oh, but
question
it was
about it.
really funny.
And we finally corralled both the kids and the chickens and brought them into. It was Steve's office, wasn't it? Or were you principal then?
I didn't know anyone who was involved except you.
So were you part of the prank?
I'm deflecting this. I am deflecting this as much as I can.
Okay.
All right. But the longest story, my part of the story, anyways, was Jeff and I, and you were in the office too, Al. And this one particular boy who happened to be the president or vice president of the National Honor Society, all right?
So there was
One,
sponsors.
and a football player, one of the nicest kids in the school. I looked at Jeff, and I looked down at the boy, and he had a piece of a chicken dropping hanging from his beautifully coiffed hair, all right? And I remember giving Jeff the high sign, and kind of giving him this look, and Jeff said, should we say something? He goes, and I said, no. He let the chickens loose, let him walk around like that. Well, it was a few years later, we were at the 5th reunion, and I pulled him aside. I says, remember that day? He says, yeah, Mr. Bell. I said, that was kind of a sad day. I felt badly. I says, me too. I says, you had a piece of something hanging from your head. And I told her what it was, and we laughed about it. And that is another part of Chancellor High School, by the way. You can discipline a kid, and after you discipline them, I think you guys set this as kind of a stamp for us to follow later on. There was no animosity between the kids and you. I mean, it might have been some hard feelings at the beginning, but boy, everything was forgotten, everything was submerged. That kid was part of that school, and we just went forward with it.
Once he
That
served
was
the
the way the
penalty, once
school
he
worked.
served the penalty,
Took 'em
Right,
back. You took 'em
exactly.
back.
you forgot about it.
Yeah, and they didn't believe that you forgot
No,
about it. You
no,
say,
they
I won't remember the
They remember-
graduation. You don't.
When we go to the reunions, they say, remember when I did this?
know,
Remember when I did that?
That's
No,
right.
I don't.
Sorry.
Yeah, but some of you have trouble remembering breakfast.
Well, Jeff, you're going to get there.
It did remind me of the one that most people think was the best, when the seniors collected women's upper undergarments and strung them across the pond on one side of the
Yeah,
building. There must
yeah.
have been 50 or 60 of them.
Who was the
They
class,
strung them
who was the
with
class
83.
advisor?
Who was the class advisor?
Yeah, right there.
There was
It had
a,
nothing to do with the prank. I was just the advisor.
there was 1,000, they
83.
claimed.
They got
But
exactly
it took them
83.
over a
Oh, look.
month of collecting, and quietly, nobody knew anything
know,
about
that
it.
morning
They
when we
collected
came
them
in.
and-
That morning, him and I said, stand here on the second landing. I said, we'll find out who it is in 10 minutes. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, these two kids come up. Come on, we'll show you what we did.
And had they already,
They're
they
already
already-
taken down, so
had they informed you of it
No,
prior to?
I found out when I came in for morning coffee, and Ed said to me, the Georges want to see you. So I had to go down and see Mr. Simone and Mr. Betsis, and they informed me of the prank. And I, of course, knew nothing about it. I did find out afterwards.
well, we knew who the culprits were. That was one of the funniest things we ever did.
But the best, my favorite is
first.
still when they kidnapped all the erasers and held them for ransom. They went through took
yeah,
every
yeah,
eraser, every
yeah.
teacher's
Which
eraser.
class? Do you know what class this
I
was?
can't remember. You guys.
Yeah, wait a minute.
I was
It was a
Dean.
relative of mine that was involved, and I
that's
found out
easy.
about it, right? And I made him return all the erasers. And 3 days later, Ed Quinn comes running to my office saying, I know who did it. I go, we've already done it.
It tells you that he was working on it,
Sounds
that's
like an
all.
exaggeration.
Yes.
You realize that all the administrators in the school system that are now watching this hate us. Because we're talking about pranks and they don't want pranks.
I know it, I know it.
Oh, the dangerous one. Remember the dangerous one that we had with the car? And
The car and the
Oh,
water.
the car in the water.
Well,
Something could
it
have
was
been killed in
amazing to
that.
find out how they did it. I
Yeah.
mean, that was the thing that was
Right.
scary.
We're lucky somebody wasn't hurt, really
correct.
seriously
I know,
hurt.
I know.
Well, we had, some kid took a box of marbles,
Yes.
threw them down the hallway.
Hallway.
It was a young lady who happened to be in the bathroom. It was down the Dickinson hallway, who had just been in a serious car accident.
Right.
And if she had come out and if she had come
Hit
out
one
of
of
the
those,
bathroom
I
and
know.
taken a fall,
That's true.
she could have been badly injured. So sometimes
was a
they
bad
don't
one. They
think
don't think.
about.
They locked the doors too that time.
And one time they locked
doors
the
were-
doors, remember that
Yes,
morning? You
doors
couldn't
were
get
locked
in.
at either end.
They had
Yeah.
the tape and the glue and
So as I'm, hold on though, but I have to start to wrap this up. I do need to know, I mean, you're all good friends too. I mean, that's worked out, so the pranks weren't too bad. But who is the best golfer right now?
the best golfer?
Yeah, Jack.
Jack is.
Now, is that because he took more time prior to his
Because he does it
retirement
all
to
the
playing
time.
He took
golf?
longer lunch breaks.
When Jack became a dean, he told the principal at the time, who happened to be his father, by the way, that he would need 1 day a week to be at Long Meadow to play golf. And his father allowed it. Okay, I wouldn't have, but, you know.
Do research.
Well, I have to say, I want on behalf of CHS Alumni Talk, and I'm sure every alumni that watches this, and even the people of Chelmsford that watch the show, I greatly appreciate this. Has been the greatest half hour of talking with you, and I thank you for everything that you did for the Chelmsford High School system, even myself. So thank you very much for being
Thank
here.
you.
It was
Thank
a
you
great
very much.
opportunity, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Well, let me tell you,
did you golf when you were young?